Listen, Billy Pilgrim has come unstuck in time. Billy has gone to sleep, a senile widower, and awakened on his wedding day. He has walked through a door in 1955 and come out another one in 1941. He has gone back through that door to find himself in 1963. He has seen his birth and death many times, he says, and pays random visits to all the events in between, he says.
Oh boy, it's a time travel podcast. My name is Nate, and as he goes, so goes this podcast. It's Brian Martin.
Hello, everybody.
Brian. What have you done to us here?
Man, wow. So we've barely started talking, Nate and I, this evening as we sit down to record. But already there's this palpable energy in the air.
You can cut the tension with a knife, I feel.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and cut it a little bit with this whiskey. Are you drinking anything tonight?
Well, yeah. So it's Kurt Vonnegut night here on Oh Boy. So Vonnegut's drink of choice was scotch and water. Basic, simple, right? I'm out of scotch. I got no scotch. I feel terrible about that.
So you're just drinking water?
I'm just drinking water. No, I do have whiskey and water.
Okay.
So I do have that. I wanted to at least come close to paying tribute with a drink because this podcast that we're about to record will almost certainly not do Vonnegut justice.
This will be no tribute at all. I can promise you that.
Well, here's the thing. I've taken notes. I have a number of topics to talk about. Some of them veer literary criticism. Some of them are a little bit more superficial, and it's all there just in case the conversation goes in whatever direction it goes in. Because I don't know. I don't know how far into the weeds we're going to get on this. Tonight, guys, we are talking about Kurt Vonnegut's 1969 masterwork, Slaughterhouse 5.
Masterwork. Someday I hope to have a masterwork.
I think Waylon is your masterwork.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We can accept that our children are our masterworks and just...
I think that's generally what society does, right?
Right.
Maybe the next one.
I did okay.
I mean, granted, I didn't amount to anything, but my kid. Yeah. That's not true.
Are we ready to talk about this? No. I would say no. I could ruminate about this for years without even getting to the point where I'm ready to talk about it and still not be ready to talk about it.
Now, you, sir, are an academic.
Well, okay. All right. That's doing a lot of heavy lifting
so
there, but
I was expecting the intelligence to come from your side of the conversation.
It still might. It still might.
Likely.
Yeah. Comparatively speaking.
Shut up, butthead. Come on.
Thanks.
No. This is a book I read for the first time around 2008, maybe. It was not long after Vonnegut passed away that I read this book for the first time.
But see,
I didn't read it in high school.
Yeah, I was going to say,
college.
you read it of your own volition, right?
I read it to read it.
Yeah, see, I read it when I was taking college English my senior year in high school. That was the last time before now that I had read that book.
Wow.
And so a lot of what I'm pulling is from Miss Boswell Baer's class, circa 1990s.
You had a teacher named... Did you have a teacher who was a Muppet?
At the time, she was...
Hi, I'm Boswell Baer. Please open your books.
She was a hyphenated last name. I think she was married to the band teacher. At any rate.
So the band teacher was a Muppet.
Band teacher was Baer.
Moving right along.
What I have done over the course of my collegiate career, my high school career, English class I've always really excelled at. Okay?
Okay.
And it's not for the reading. We all know I can't read. Everyone out there listening knows I don't know how to read. Once things have been read and we're having like the classroom discussions and I start to understand some of the things that the author is trying to do, I get all of that from the discussion. It is very difficult for me to read prose and pick up themes and motifs in a way that visual media doesn't. Movies, television, comic books, these types of things, it clicks much, much better.
Well, I think your first mistake is thinking of literature as a non-visual medium.
I mean, this one didn't have pictures.
Actually, it's about a very important picture. One of a pony and a woman.
Oh, yes.
In a dirty picture of a woman attempting sexual intercourse with a Shetland pony. He had made Billy Pilgrim admire that picture several times. The picture that Weary had was a print of the first dirty photograph in history.
I mean, look, I pictured that when I was reading. That picture recurs in Vonnegut's work. It's been in other works.
Yeah.
And there's characters in this book that appear in other
the
works.
Vonnegut verse?
The VCU. There is.
Yeah, you called it a masterwork. This book means a lot to a lot of people. And in an attempt to, as I was saying before, be a part of a conversation about the book after having read it again here, I cheated and I've done some reading on it and I've watched some videos of people discussing it, because when I read the book, or I should say, listened to the book read to me, I mean, I get it. I knew what the story was. I knew what was going on. But I know that the book is important enough that I'm clearly missing something. So
what does it mean? Right.
So I'm hoping to pull some of that out of our conversation tonight. I kind of looked into some of these things outside of reading it.
Well, that's good, because I didn't do a whole lot of pulling in. As I was going through it, I would jot down the ideas, okay? And like, what is this about? Here's a connective thread to this, those sorts of things, right? In a linear story, that can be tough. In a non-linear story that is so non-linear that one paragraph and the next paragraph may not be concurrent at all, it becomes really, really hard to lock that down. But I think Vonnegut does a really good job of building towards the actual climax of his story, which is actually one of the first things chronologically that happens in Billy Pilgrim's journey that as far as we process it, right? Dresden is the climax. Right? For him to be able to tell a story that is so out of sequence as Slaughterhouse 5 and still effectively thread the needle and build to that climactic moment is, I don't know how somebody writes a book like this. You know, I know how somebody writes a time travel book where characters go back and forth, right? But I don't understand how you write a book like this. And that's what makes Vonnegut one of the greatest 20th century authors. He's able to just take ideas and words and assemble them in a way that is just extraordinary. When I read this, that's what I get from it.
This one in particular, because of the nonlinear style. In your note-taking, did you at all discover what this book is about?
Yeah, I think I know what this book is about.
Can you summarize it for the audience?
Again, not well.
Did you? I guess I've... Okay,
yes, I can. I'm proud of my synopsis.
All right,
I'm proud of my synopsis.
I'm looking forward to it.
Whoa, wait a minute, Doc. Are you trying to tell me that my mother has got the hots for me?
Precisely.
Okay, guys, here we go.
Is this going to be like half the podcast?
No, it's not. I actually kept it pretty simple.
Nice.
And I think this whole episode isn't going to be so much like a recap as it is just an unpacking of experience now that we've gone through this. But this book, of course, Slaughterhouse 5, or The Children's Crusade, A Duty Dance with Death, from 1969, written by Kurt Vonnegut. And the story starts like this. Listen, Billy Pilgrim has come unstuck in time. Billy is an average man with an average life. He works from 9 to 5. He has a humongous wife. Billy's life is both mundane and extraordinary, which is to say he's just another guy slogging through it all, albeit a bit out of sequence. On a fateful day in World War II, Billy finds himself bouncing back and forth through his life. One moment, he is with his wife on her birthday. The next, he is in a veterans hospital recovering from a plane crash. From there, he might end up at the end of his life staring down the barrel of an assassin's laser gun. And don't even get me started on the Tralfamadorians, an alien species who benevolently abduct Billy for use in an interstellar zoo before sending him through a time warp that sets the nonlinear events of Billy's life in ricocheting motion and provides him with the philosophy that comes to govern his outlook on life. But Billy always ends up in Dresden, Germany, where he and his fellow, and by fellow I mean antagonistic, servicemen, face down one of the most horrific attacks in American history from a bunker underneath Schlachthof 5.
God bless you.
That's Slaughterhouse 5. That's all I'm going to say. That's it.
Well, you got me.
And I quoted Rockwell's Somebody's Watching Me in there. Did you catch that?
No.
I'm just an average man with an average life. I work from 9 to 5. You know that?
No, I didn't recognize it, but it did.
I have a humongous wife.
It did make me think that you were going to make your entire synopsis rhyme.
No, God, no. Well, I don't know why. But no, it was just, I just started writing and I was like, I'm just an average man with an average life. And I just started like Rockwell. Somebody's watching me. You know, that's all. For no other reason than that, just where my headspace was at after Slaughterhouse 5. Now, okay, so I've got my copy of the actual book here.
Okay.
But Nate, you know, I don't have a whole lot of free time. And I found myself up against a wall this week. And I had to take a page from the Nate playbook because I realized the only time I have available to really be reading is when I'm driving a car. So what I did was read in the car while I was driving. No, I'm just kidding. What I did was listen to an audiobook of half of it I listened to the audio.
Read by whom?
And the other half I had read. Well, that's what I was wondering. Mine was the Audible version.
This is Audible.
Which is read by James Franco.
Yeah, that's the one I read.
Is that the one you read?
Yeah.
He did a good job with it.
He did a good job.
I found it very engaging. He's got the right voice to capture. It's not despairing. It is just accepting.
Yeah.
Right?
It feels a little despairing. I definitely accepting. I think if we're going to start anywhere with this, it's got to be that secondary title. Mm-hmm. The book has, I think, a lot of themes, but the one that even clobbered me over the head is that it's obviously anti-war, right? And just in the title alone, basically it's sending children to war.
Yes.
And the most striking statement that really opens this book for me is when Vonnegut, as he's basically himself speaking.
Yeah, Vonnegut himself is the narrator in this story.
Right.
Like, very actively the narrator. He refers to himself in chapter 1 and again later on.
Right.
And even the coach character in this, who steals the teapot and is then gunned down by firing squad, that was a real person that he knew when he was in Dresden being held captive by the Germans, just like everything we see in the story.
I think a lot of it is pulled directly from his life. So his lived experience. Yeah. But I think the most telling, and probably the statement that really kick-started this book for him, were the comments of the wife. He went to speak with one of his old war buddies who didn't want to talk about Dresden at all.
Right.
Claimed to not remember anything.
Billy Bernard.
Bernard O'Hare. Okay. The wife was the one who was so against the conversation because she just assumed that if he wrote this book, or if they made a movie of the book, it would be a celebration of war, as opposed to what she saw.
Then she turned to me, let me see how angry she was, and that the anger was for me. You were just babies in the war, like the ones upstairs. I nodded that this was true. We had been foolish virgins in the war, right at the end of childhood. But you're not going to write it that way, are you? I don't know, I said. Well, I know, she said. You'll pretend you are men instead of babies, and you'll be played in the movies by Frank Sinatra and John Wayne or some of those other glamorous, war-loving, dirty old men, and the war will look just wonderful, so we'll have a lot more of them, and they'll be fought by babies like the babies upstairs. So then I understood. It was war that made her so angry. She didn't want her babies or anybody else's babies killed in wars. So I held up my right hand and I made her a promise. Mary, I said, I don't think this book of mine is ever going to be finished. I must have written 5,000 pages by now and thrown them all away. If I ever do finish it, though, I give you my word of honor, there won't be a part for Frank Sinatra or John Wayne. I tell you what, I said. I'll call it The Children's Crusade. She was my friend after that.
They can't come home and drink alcohol. You know,
Right,
they're like,
yeah. Like, everybody saw some shit, and you just shut up about it. And the horrors of war that were experienced by Vonnegut and the people he served with and by the characters in this novel, that's where the anti-war statement comes from. And I think this resonates a lot more with me now than it even did when I read it the first time, because in the ensuing 15 years or however long it's been, 18 years since I read it, I understand my dad more and my dad's wartime experience in Vietnam and the impact, the long-reaching impacts that had. And I think that's a direct reflection of his dad's generation, right? Like, you internalize these things. You don't talk about it. You just have to buck up. This is what it means to be a patriot.
right.
And they're things you don't get over, right? They're things that emotionally scar you. And obviously, Dresden is the fulcrum point for Billy throughout his entire
Billy
life.
and Kurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear you say that, because the book was published at the height of the Vietnam War. So despite the fact that the events in the book are reflecting some atrocities from World War II, I mean, it was really, I think a lot of people took it as a statement against what was going on in Vietnam. And what that boils down to is it's just against all war.
Yeah. It's against the concept of war, which is inevitable. What is it? There's an academic or somebody he's talking to. Oh, director. He's talking to with the idea, and he's like, you might as well write a book
glaciers.
Coming out against glaciers, because you have just as good a chance of stopping them. Now, if he could see us now, like, yeah, humanity won, glaciers fucking
right.
0. We did it, folks. Never again.
Did not age well. It's true, but
No. Finish that thought. I want
to quote The Simpsons.
As we so often do.
I just remember early on, there was an episode of The Simpsons that was literally against war. It was like a water balloon fight. And I don't remember it well enough, but at the end, Bart Simpson comes on and says that war is bad and all wars are bad, with the exception of The Empire Strikes Back and World War II.
There are no good wars, with the following exceptions: the American Revolution, World War II, and the Star Wars trilogy.
Or something like that, you know?
Right.
And
yeah.
Society, if you were to ask, pretty much everybody's going to say, yeah, we needed to be involved there. Like, that war had to happen, right? Like, if you ever think of a war that would be quote-unquote justified, one would think World War II might be the one, which I think makes it a great backdrop for this same kind of argument, because
certainly a better backdrop than Vietnam would have been, because consensus on Vietnam
finding consensus on Vietnam at that time would have been rather difficult, and being a contemporary, probably not the best idea. But with regards to World War II, this book doesn't display all of the German soldiers as horrific, horrible people.
Right. It goes out of its way to portray everyone, except maybe like one dude, as just people. Like, we're all just people. I love the way the Tralfamadorians kind of explain what a human looks like based on the way they see time.
Yeah, the
where
vision.
it's just like this this million-legged worm almost, where the front legs are baby hands and the back legs are old man feet. You know, like you're just seeing someone in the full scope of themselves.
Yeah.
And it's not about right and wrong. Everything simply is.
And the fact that Dresden was not a military stronghold has something to do with that too, because
sure, yeah.
Vonnegut, I think, ended up carrying some guilt for being on the side of the people that dropped the bombs.
Oh, sure, yeah. There are moments right before the Dresden bombing. You know, there's that scene where they inadvertently walk in on a bunch of teenage girls.
Remind me.
Well, it's like they're all in the shower or something. And the POWs are kind of led into this space, and there's a bunch of like teenage girls in there, and they all shriek and point at them and stuff. And then there's the one German soldier who's like 16 years old and has never seen a woman before, is like, but he makes a point. They'll all be dead in 12 hours. And then the soldiers, the German soldiers, they've all gone home to their family. The soldiers are going to die. Their families, their wives, their kids, everyone's going to die. And underscoring how much worse Dresden is than Hiroshima.
Right.
And it kind of being not something that America wants to talk about, because Hiroshima seems like the moral victory, because, hey, you bombed us first, and we're going to end this by bombing you to Kingdom Come. And boom, look, we won, guys, you know? But meanwhile, there's this horrible thing that happened to a place largely populated by civilians that had no military purpose whatsoever. And we've bombed it to Kingdom Come, right?
Right.
When the three fools found the communal kitchen, whose main job was to make lunch for workers in the slaughterhouse, everybody had gone home but one woman who had been waiting for them impatiently. She was a war widow, so it goes. She had her hat and coat on. She wanted to go home too, even though there wasn't anybody there. She asked Gluck if he wasn't awfully young to be in the army. He admitted that he was. She asked Edgar Derby if he wasn't awfully old to be in the army. He said he was. She asked Billy Pilgrim what he was supposed to be. Billy said he didn't know. He was just trying to keep warm. All the real soldiers are dead, she said. It was true. So it goes.
I mean, the difficulty comes in making people well-rounded. If all of the characters in the book have their flaws and triumphs, if nobody is completely evil, with the exception of
that one guy
that was the head of the Three Musketeers, what was his name?
The guy I'm thinking of is Paul Lazzaro.
Oh.
Paul Lazzaro is the one actual fucking dirtbag in this book. I think
he does stick up for his friends.
I think stick up is a way to put it. Roland Weary is the one who blames Billy for his own eventual death of gangrene.
Yeah,
right?
That's the guy that I would say was evil.
He was just a jerk. I mean, he just seemed like a bully to me. He seemed like a guy who was weak, but Billy was comparatively weaker. So I'm going to exploit the weakness of this guy to build myself up, to beat my chest a little bit, because he's the only guy I can push around. That's the way I felt about him. Now, he took it all the way to the extreme level of saying to Paul Lazzaro, avenge me, you know? And so Paul Lazzaro spends the next however many, like 25 years slowly hunting him down.
Yeah. I guess now that you mention that, yeah, he was described as being small and behind clothing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my mental picture of him was much more, I think it was because, now that I'm starting to think about it, it's because the knife that he was so proud of, with the spikes on the handle.
Now, lying in the ditch with Billy and the scouts after having been shot at, Weary made Billy take a very close look at his trench knife. It wasn't government issue. It was a present from his father. It had a 10-inch blade that was triangular in cross-section. Its grip consisted of brass knuckles, was a chain of rings through which Weary slipped his stubby fingers. The rings weren't simple. They bristled with spikes. Weary laid the spikes along Billy's cheek, roweled the cheek with savagely affectionate restraint. How'd you like to be hit with this, He wanted to know. I wouldn't, said Billy.
Right.
And he rubbed those spikes against Billy's cheek. And you remember that scene. And what kind of evil or what kind of character would carry a knife like that? And my mind probably filled in blanks that Vonnegut wasn't.
The answer is a Rob Liefeld.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Somebody from Youngblood is what I'm seeing here. But yeah, no, I guess he's more like a child, which was the point.
Well, that's the thing. He's like a child. Why? Where did he get that knife from? His dad was obsessed with torture devices, right?
Right.
And so you can kind of see this guy probably he probably didn't have the greatest relationship with his dad, and I'm sure that part of this is psychological scarring from that's carrying over into his adulthood, right?
Yeah.
I got to find someone smaller than me and I got to show them who's boss. I got
Okay.
to lift myself up. Like, those things don't happen in a vacuum. And I mean, I don't see how a happy, well-adjusted grown man with a torture dungeon, I don't see that. You don't have a normal dude who just has a torture dungeon and obsesses over things like Iron Maidens, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not the band.
That's a healthy obsession.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because the image that's left with me is one, the knife, obviously, which they spend a lot of time describing, I feel like. And then the other being his attempted murder of Billy. You know, he had his boot heel on his spine before he was rescued, quote unquote, by German soldiers who came across it. All of those images, I guess I was reading as stronger character than... You're right, because he mentioned the scarf that he had wrapped in front of his face, and all you ever saw was his eyes anyway. So he was like a child wearing a scarf from home.
But they're all children.
Yeah, but they're all children.
Right? Like, that's how this plays out for Billy. He's not an adult. Like, Billy in the war is not portrayed as being remotely adult-like. And none of the people he's there with are either, with the exception of the coach.
Yeah.
And the Brits, who are just like in an alternate reality, you know, like, oh, I say, like, it's just like nothing has changed for them. We've got nice drapes and,
yeah,
it's bizarre, but that's kind of the point. Like, all of these kids are conscripted, put over there, and they don't become adults the second they end up there. What ends up happening is they experience things that no developing mind should be exposed to, right? And we'll get to the Tralfamadorians, I know, but the thing that compels Billy to be unstuck in time is trauma, right? Like, that's what he's hung up on. That's why he finds himself bouncing from place to place. That's why he seems so checked out. And one of my favorite moments early in the book is when we find out that he's got that placard in his optometrist office that has the AA slogan on it. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom always to tell the difference. Right? Which you later find out is also the inscription on Montana Wildhack's locket. But among the things Billy Pilgrim could not change were the past, the present, and the future. Right? I love that early on. Like Billy, regardless of how real his time travel experience is, Billy's kind of the perfect vessel for this story.
Real to him.
Right. Billy's the perfect vessel for this story because he has no interest in altering things. He just sort of understands things happen. This is the way that things happen, and we must accept things as they are, right? And the way he comes to rationalize it ultimately is through the mantras and the teachings of the Tralfamadorians and how they see existence outside of time, right? That death is not... Death is just a body that's broken, or however they describe it. A body that's not doing so hot that moment.
That's right. I'm pretty sure those were the immortal words of Vonnegut, Kurt Vonnegut. A body that's not doing so hot right now.
See, this is why he's the writing guy, and but that's the general gist of it, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, he really is kind of a vapid vessel. He's in my opinion.
All right, so I kind of looked at him as a pacifist in the war, right? That's
definitely, yeah.
Well, he doesn't even carry a weapon, right?
Right.
He's a pacifist that becomes a passivist, right? Life is happening around him, and he's completely passive about it, right?
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Yeah. Part of that is just the dulling that happens to you on a psychological and emotional level when you go through the sort of experience he went through. There's moments in the story that point out, oh, he didn't cry the whole time, even though he saw plenty that could compel someone to cry. There's only a couple times in this story where he has a raw emotional reaction to anything.
Yeah.
And it's when his attention is brought to the condition of the horses in the carriage he's using to leave Dresden, right?
Oh. Okay, no, I thought you were going to... Okay, and I thought you were going to another place.
Well, that's one of them. And he cries when he sees the horses. But the other one, and this is probably where you thought I was going with it, was the barbershop quartet singing.
Right, yeah.
At the party, and then he just has this complete breakdown. And why? Because it's an image in his head that he saw in Dresden after the bombing. Right? And it's an immediate connection there, right?
Right. It's a PTSD of sorts.
Sure, shell shock.
That was a thing.
They called it shell shock in World War II.
Shell shock, right.
Unexpectedly, Billy Pilgrim found himself upset by the song and the occasion. He had never had an old gang, old sweethearts and pals, but he missed one anyway, as the quartet made slow, agonized experiments with chords. Billy had powerful psychosomatic responses to the changing chords. His mouth filled with the taste of lemonade, and his face became grotesque, as though he really were being stretched on the torture engine called the rack. They thought he might have been having a heart attack, and Billy seemed to confirm this by going to a chair and sitting down haggardly.
You know, whatever this barbershop quartet was able to elicit from
the four-eyed bastards.
Yeah. Yeah.
The feds.
However that manifested, however he was affected by that, like, I don't know if it's a lack of lived experience. It was hard for me to really kind of rationalize the connection between the two. But outside of those two moments, Billy Pilgrim himself, and far be it from me, given this is clearly a masterwork of literature, he's not compelling.
Well, I think that's the point. Like, I really think that's the point.
It's to the point of disinteresting.
Like,
and I think
he's not a character you root for. There's nothing here to root for. But I think that it's like that by design.
Maybe. I don't know if it works for me. And like I said, when we get to a point where we're talking about well-accepted literature masterworks, I feel inadequate passing any kind of judgment.
It's no time cop comic.
Exactly. Right. It's clear where my...
Can you imagine this movie ending with Pootie Wheat? And then it's like, Tom won't let me.
That's right. That's right. Some kind of rock ballad at the end.
Yeah.
Well, that's the kind of thing that they really wanted to avoid.
Yeah.
Avoiding a John Wayne style movie.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's good. But it didn't work 100% for me because everything that Billy Pilgrim was experiencing, he was just describing in what I would consider very dry language. You know, and
oh, sure.
And not necessarily the writing of Vonnegut, but he just doesn't care about anything.
Well, here's the thing.
War, I understand it's like war has basically made him numb to these things, and it's a way for himself to cope with the things that he's seen and dealt with, and his whole experience with the Tralfamadorians, whether you want to believe that's a real thing or not, is really just a new philosophy on life that he's had to take in order to heal, right?
Right.
But it's boring.
So here's...
I don't know.
There's three things here I want to kind of touch on.
Okay.
First of which is the reaction he has to the barbershop quartet.
Okay.
I don't believe I've ever experienced anything as traumatic as what Billy experiences in Dresden. By a long shot.
Oh, you think?
I don't think I've ever experienced personally something. I've never walked through like a battlefield. You know what I mean?
No, I get it.
And seen bodies everywhere. But the way I think of it is this. There are songs that when I hear them trigger specific, very happy memories for me. And I'm flooded with that emotion that I felt back then.
Okay.
That's what happens to Billy here.
Is it the song? I thought
It can be anything.
I don't
it
think
can be
it was...
a place you see. It's not the song. It's the image of the barbershop quartet.
Of
But
their
all I'm
faces,
saying is
yeah.
we have these psychological anchors throughout our life. And maybe it's a picture, maybe it's an image, maybe it's a song we heard, maybe it's a place we were standing, all of those things. But when you capture that again, or that memory is triggered by something in your environment, it sends you back. It puts you right back there, you know? And that's what happens to him here, and it isn't pretty, right? Like, this is not the sort of thing you want to remember, and it's also something he's really actively repressed, right?
Right.
He's not dealing with it, and every time his wife mentions, it seems like you have a secret, and Billy's like, I don't have any secrets. It's like, well, you do.
Billy, are you all right? Yes. You look so awful. Really, I'm okay. And he was, too. Except that he could find no explanation for why the song had affected him so grotesquely. He had supposed for years that he had no secrets from himself. Here was proof that he had a great big secret somewhere inside, and he could not imagine what it was.
You're harboring all of this stress and trauma that you experienced, and you're not dealing with it in a healthy way, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is Billy, to me, as a protagonist, however you want to... He simply is. He's not a protagonist. He's not an antagonist. There is no antagonist in this book. That's what Vonnegut makes a point to mention at one point. There are no villains.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Everyone simply is, which is part of the book's philosophy. But I look at Billy and I think, this guy is the everyman. The way he behaves, the way he goes through life, this applies to a lot of people who just, get up, soldier through life, and just do their thing.
Yeah.
And don't sit there. Billy is not the kind of guy who would be on a microphone at 11:20 on a Friday night talking about subtext in literature. You know what I mean? Like, there is no subtext. Everything simply is as it is, right?
Yeah, okay.
And the third thing I wanted to mention was the philosophy of the Tralfamadorians and how he kind of comes to accept it as himself. Because the other part of trauma and the other part of getting past things either we've done that we later consider to be bad, or that we've experienced that we don't want to remember, is sort of psychologically our brain kind of gives us coping strategies to work around it, right?
Sure.
To sort of de-stress it or decompress it and kind of bury it or, rationalize it in a way that wouldn't make sense to any outsider. But for the sake of my own sanity, my brain is trying to work to repair this so I can live with myself.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the philosophy of the Tralfamadorians ends up being just that. So it goes.
Right.
And that becomes the mantra of the whole book.
Right.
So are the Tralfamadorians real? I don't think it really matters thematically, because they're real enough to Billy, right? As you mentioned.
Yeah.
And one way or the other, whether they're real or not, that's the sort of thing that gives him the freedom to actually continue his life, however mundane it might be, without directly confronting and wallowing in all the terrible experiences he had in the war.
Sure. Okay.
That's my takeaway from
No,
it.
I mean, that's exactly clear. That seems accurate and makes a lot of sense. I just, as far as the book is concerned, though, as far as the story is concerned, and as Billy experiences things, the only thing we can do as a reader is experience those things with Billy, right? And if he is completely numb to those things,
how are we supposed
how am I
to feel
supposed to
about
feel about it?
Right. Like, if you're not excited, why am I supposed to be excited?
Like, if you have next to no reaction, here's the thing, and again, clearly I'm missing some kind of point. I have to assume. But it seems like every time he jumps from time period to time period, whether we believe that's a true time travel or not, it's just sort of like, okay, here I am.
Here I am again.
Oh, now I'm here? Okay. Now I'm experiencing this with this person? All right.
Yeah, it does mention very early on in chapter 2 when it's explaining the process that he's kind of got to be ready to go on stage at any given time.
Right.
But to what end? Like, he's the most static character throughout this. He doesn't have to act any differently at any point in his life. He just has to stand there because that's all he fucking does.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the harder things for me to take from this book. And I think it's just that I get it. I understand why he is the way he is. I understand what the author is trying to say by making him the way that he is, and it clearly works. But as far as like engaging in the story, if you jump to a whole new time period and a whole new location, and it's just like, oh, I'm back here, it's not engaging enough for me to really grasp what you're trying to tell me, I think. And that's probably more of the reader kind of than it is the author. But
remember the touchback guy?
Sure.
And how he was when he went to the past? This is like just below that on the scale of interest, right? He went back and he's like, oh, wow, okay, you know? Like, Billy's like...
Yeah. I don't know. That was difficult for me. But I got it. So, regardless of who he was with, his comrades at arms in war, the other POWs, whether it's his wife, whether it's his daughter, his reaction to these people are the same.
Don't forget Montana Wild Hack. The only one where the reaction slightly different because he's like at half-mast.
Yeah, you're right. I left that off.
Not even full. Not even full, just half-mast. But I mean, it's a reaction. He felt something.
And when you've got a wang like that, I mean...
Obviously, I was like, whoa. Really buried the lead on this one, Vonnegut. My boy's hung. Maybe, oh God, Nate, what if that was the problem with the horse? What if the horses were fine otherwise, but that one area had been blown to smithereens? And he was like, oh man, I know how you guys feel because I have one just like you do.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody. Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Anyway, the wife, the daughter, these experiences, this life that he has outside of the war, it's like... his daughter is begging him to be normal.
Right, yeah, I mean, because, like, what is your deal? So 2 ways to kind of look at this. If we take it at face value and consider that Billy's been bouncing back and forth throughout his whole life, it's not that he has agency to change anything. It's that he already knows everything that's going to happen, right? He becomes this sort of omniscient figure in his life. How do you get excited about anything?
Yeah.
That's part of the problem. He's just kind of going through the motions at all times, even up to the very final moments of his life, which I would say it's kind of the most animated we ever see him.
Well, it's the most pointed that we see him.
It's like, I think of him as Third Eye Billy at that point. Like his third eye, his mystic eye into the nethers has opened, you know, and he's suddenly got this enlightenment. Or
is it? I don't know. To me, it's kind of the opposite, because at that moment, when he's giving the speech that's trying to convey the philosophy of the Tralfamadorians, right? Which is, again, may not even be true, but it's certainly a philosophy of his, because...
it's true to him.
Yeah, it's true enough to him that he claims to know all and be unable to control it. But the good flip side to that, and the good side to all of the deaths throughout the book, all hundreds of thousands of deaths that he's seen, is the fact that because time exists this way, there is no end.
Right. No one's ever really gone.
No one's ever really gone.
And the fact that... that's right. And as he's giving that speech, and people start to boo at the idea that he may be killed by this man from his past, he said, "Oh, hey, you're missing the point."
Billy is speaking before a capacity audience in a baseball park, which is covered by a geodesic dome. Billy predicts his own death within an hour. He laughs about it, invites the crowd to laugh with him. "It is high time I was dead," he says. "Many years ago," he said, "a certain man promised to have me killed. Tonight he will keep his promise." There are protests from the crowd. Billy Pilgrim rebukes them. "If you protest, if you think that death is a terrible thing, then you have not understood a word I've said." Now he closes his speech as he closes every speech. "Farewell, hello. Farewell, hello."
Like, it doesn't matter. because I'm already alive in these other time periods. Right. Now, of course, we're getting dangerously close to talking about the time travel there, so I'm going to back off on that a little bit. But
I think we can. That's okay. We could talk about, the function of it without. Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we can't. Maybe it's really tough because yeah. Anyway, keep going.
Just trying to squeeze this book into the format that our podcast is.
We talked about Free Jack 2 episodes ago, for Christ's sake.
We talked about Beavis and Butthead.
A month ago, we were talking about Beavis and Butthead.
The thought dog is full of things not known to our time.
I think we could go from there in his sort of life philosophy to talk a little bit more about Billy's experiences beyond the war. Because it's not like he stops having traumatic experiences once he's out of the war, right? In fact,
no, he's in a plane crash.
He's the sole survivor of a plane load of optometrists going to a conference, right? And he ends up in the hospital for that. He has a complete mental breakdown when he's still in school, optometry school, and ends up hospitalized for that.
Feels like that should have its own word.
Yeah, it probably does.
Optometry school.
It probably does. But the first experience where he is in that psych ward is where he meets the gentleman who introduces him to the author Kilgore Trout, right? And those books become the only books he reads.
Right. Science fiction.
Yeah. And he has a lot of ideas and concepts in there that are later embodied by the Tralfamadorians later in his life, right? Which draws that into question. And then his bunkmate in the later hospital after the plane crash is, oh gosh, what is his name? Is it Rosewater? No, Rosewater's the one with the sci-fi novels, because he's the one. And there's another book about Rosewater, by the way.
Oh, God! Rosewater's one of the part of
one of the characters.
PCU.
Rosewater and Kilgore Trout both appear in other things.
Oh, okay.
So they come back. So they're not. We know that they are not figments of his imagination or anything like that. No, the guy I was thinking of was Rumford, the professor who wants to write about Dresden, right? And he's kind of like this arrogant jerk who doesn't like Billy at all, but that's most everybody that meets him. But he keeps talking about how Billy's like always asleep, doesn't talk, and he keeps mumbling about how he's sorry or, talking about the war and all of these things. And it's like, is he just revisiting all of this in his head, right? Is all of his time travel just, again, his subconscious rationalizing everything that's happened to him?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about that. And again, this may be a non sequitur for most people that are analyzing this, but I think it's a disservice to those types of questions to have your entire first chapter be from the perspective of the author.
Okay.
Where it just paints this whole thing as a story. We know this is somebody's imagination. There's a literary device that Vonnegut is taking advantage of. Granted, I don't know what it is.
What do you call this?
Because I'm not smart. But the point is, separating yourself from your story cheats us from the opportunity of believing whether something is true or not. And the way you decide to frame things, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because Billy Pilgrim's not real. And to me, that's a frustration. And Vonnegut's a great writer, clearly. So there's a reason for that, but I can't put my finger on it. And I want to be able to be immersed in the story well enough to feel like, okay, well, is Billy imagining most of these things, or is he actually, quote unquote, unstuck? And it kind of robs me of the opportunity to really think that way. And that might just, again, maybe me.
No,
I don't know.
I mean, I think you're kind of onto something there.
Good thinking, Beavis.
But I look at this kind of like, all right, so Billy can't really come to terms with his experiences in the war. And I think Vonnegut's going through kind of the same arc writing this
absolutely
book, right?
Yeah.
So inserting himself into it periodically gives him the freedom to view everything from a distance, right?
Sure.
Almost without directly engaging with it. I think this book probably helped him work through some shit.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that there's a difference between inserting yourself in the way that he did when they were cleaning the latrine.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a character here too. I'm telling this story. Like, I experienced things too, and I'm aware. But
he's
to take
telling
an
the whole
entire
story.
chapter of, I'm trying to write a book. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to write this book. I can't really figure out how I want to write this book. I'm going to go talk to my friend and see how he thinks I should write this book. Well, this is kind of what I came up with. I'm going to write this book this way, and here it is. That's different than, like, I'm also a character in the book.
You reminded me of a part of it, and this is in chapter 8. In my version, it's page 164.
Poor old Derby, the doomed high school teacher, lumbered to his feet for what was probably the finest moment in his life. There are almost no characters in this story and almost no dramatic confrontations because most of the people in it are so sick and so much the listless playthings of enormous forces. One of the main effects of war, after all, is that people are discouraged from being characters. But old Derby was a character now.
But old Derby was a character now. Are there characters in this book? Are there actual characters with arc? Does anybody really learn anything, right?
No. No.
It's such, to me, a unique work of fiction because it does buck all of that. The point of it is there is no arc.
Yeah, it's not the hero's journey. It's like the
Yeah.
opposite of the hero's journey, for sure.
But I think that Vonnegut's kind of initiating and maintaining this narration throughout, because this is his answer to the Tralfamadorians on a personal level. Maybe there's more to it than that, but I just think it's the only way he could bring himself to write about it.
Yeah. I think that science fiction is a conduit for a lot of social commentary. I mean, that's obvious. Clearly, the Tralfamadorians are reflective of his experience in the slaughterhouse. Right?
Yeah, it's they respond to him the same way the Nazis do. Why you? Why not?
Yeah, why not?
You know?
Right, or why not you? Exactly. So initially I just believed on face value that the Tralfamadorians were real and that experience had happened and that nobody was really respecting his opinions, taking any of this as truth or whatnot. But in retrospect, and after hearing some other people talk about it and really looking into it, I believe it's just the coping mechanism for the character.
I do too, but I also think this book is really asking us, is any of this real? The Tralfamadorians are no more real or imagined than Billy is.
Well, they're all imagined by Vonnegut, which we
Right,
know because of chapter 1. Damn it!
Right. I think that's part of the point, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not so much that these are characters that exist as it is every element in here serves a purpose and is part of an allegory to underscore Vonnegut's whole intention with this. War is hell.
War is senseless.
Yeah. I think this is the way Vonnegut would want his works discussed.
Over whiskey?
Over
or
whiskey.
Scotch.
Preferably Scotch, but, hey.
Right.
So it goes.
We can't obviously go an entire podcast without mentioning So It Goes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Should we go there?
Yeah, well, yeah, we should definitely go to So It Goes.
All right. So some of the things that I later heard about this book, So It Goes has several different meanings, apparently. I'll say first what I felt like. To me, and when I read it and when I remember talking about it before, So It Goes is so in line with Billy Pilgrim's character that every time it's read out, to me it means the same thing, indifference.
Yes. You know who he reminds me of, literary character-wise?
Billy Pilgrim.
Oh. Did you ever read the short story Bartleby the Scrivener? by Herman
I'm going to let
Melville.
you answer that yourself, Brian.
Okay, so did you ever listen to the story Bartleby? Did you ever listen to a dramatic interpretation of Bartleby the Scrivener? Anyway, Bartleby the Scrivener is about a guy working law office. I think he was a clerk in a law office. But his deal, every time somebody asks him to do something, his response is, I would prefer not to. Like at work.
I would often prefer not to do work.
Right,
Yeah.
but it works. Because Bartleby believed it. No, but that sort of repeated indifferent phrase. So it goes kind of feels like that. As the story goes on, and it happens over and over and over again, every time there's a mention of death, it almost takes on this sort of like reverence. It's almost like a prayer for the dying, but it's like acknowledging that time marches ever onward. And again, like the Tralfamadorian philosophy of what existed always exists. So it is, you know, like here we are. So it goes, you know, it's just, I don't know. Is indifference the same thing as acceptance? I mean, it can be sometimes, right? But indifference and acceptance, like acceptance is healthy, and indifference is almost always not.
Okay.
Right? As the story goes on, to me, indifference becomes this sort of like broader acceptance of just the way things are. And I think if it feels indifferent and it feels like a really just negative outlook on things, it has more to do with Billy's experiences and the things happening around him than it does Billy himself.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. It's a good take. I think that what I was more driving at is the idea that so it goes indicates, because it happens so often with every death, diminishes that death, not because it doesn't matter necessarily, which I guess indifference would imply, but more so that, hey, don't worry about this, because as I've tried to tell you all along, this isn't the end of this person's story. It's just part of this person's life. Like the whole, so it goes. That's this part of his existence right now. He also exists as a baby. He also exists in his joy. Yeah, acceptance is a better word, because this isn't the end of this. It's just the thing that happened.
Something I really love. We were talking earlier about the novels as a visual medium.
Yeah, you were talking about that. Yeah.
There was one moment in here that is, to me, like one of those absolutely visual moments, and it's the night of Billy's daughter's wedding, when he's up late and he's waiting for the Tralfamadorian spaceship. He's like, I've got an hour till I get abducted. Let's see what's on TV. And he watches a movie and he becomes slightly unstuck in time. And he watches a movie in reverse.
Oh, right.
And then he watches it forward.
It was a movie about American bombers in the Second World War and the gallant men who flew them. Seen backwards by Billy, the story went like this. American planes, full of holes and wounded men and corpses, took off backwards from an airfield in England. Over France, a few German fighter planes flew at them backwards, sucked bullets and shell fragments from some of the planes and crewmen. They did the same for wrecked American bombers on the ground, and those planes flew up backwards to join the formation. The formation flew backwards over a German city that was in flames. The bombers opened their bomb bay doors, exerted a miraculous magnetism which shrunk the fires, gathered them into cylindrical steel containers, and lifted the containers into the bellies of the planes.
Right? And the description of the movie in reverse is like, again, an encapsulation of exactly this concept, right? Because he is literally watching warplanes suck bullets. He's watching fires get gathered up in small cylindrical tubes and sucked back into airplanes that then fly them away and take them to a place where they can be disassembled and the rare minerals inside can be buried where no one can find them.
Yeah.
And all of the soldiers go home and go back to high school, and then Hitler's a baby.
Right.
You know, like all of that stuff. It's like, that's the scope of things that he's learning from the Tralfamadorians, right? And then he sees it all in the right order and backwards in the back order. And that, to me, which of those two versions is more optimistic? Which of those two versions is allowing him to cope with life as it is now, right? Well, obviously watching it in reverse makes everything look better, right? So why wouldn't you want to look at life like that?
Here's the way my brain works, for better or worse. When faced with this most of the time, what I draw from is the stop laughing.
I just can't wait to see.
It's the pilot episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine when Captain Sisko.
I thought you were going to say Millennium, and I was really.
No, that's right. No, Captain Sisko is tasked with explaining linear time to aliens that don't experience linear time.
Every time I throw this ball, 100 different things can happen in a game. He might swing and miss. He might hit it. The point is, you never know. You try to anticipate. Set a strategy for all the possibilities as best you can. But in the end, it comes down to throwing one pitch after another and seeing what happens. With each new consequence, the game begins to take shape.
And you have no idea what that shape is until it is completed.
That's right. In fact, the game wouldn't be worth playing if we knew what was going to happen.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
It's kind of the same idea here, because to the Tralfamadorians, when I really try to put my brain around it, why do they even have a zoo? Like, why does anything happen? It all happens at once. It's a way of viewing the world as if you already know all of the things that happen, there's no point where you're making choices because the choices are already made. And I don't know, just seeing Benjamin Sisko using baseball to explain linear time because each pitch brings out a different, unexpected outcome. Like, you cannot know what will happen next until you throw the pitch. Right? To me, that's like a masterwork in perspective.
That's great. And it's way more optimistic than this, which is all about predeterminism. They're trying to achieve two different things, obviously. But
yeah, good point. I mean, that's hadn't really thought about that way. Yeah. It's somewhat more defeatist to think that there's nothing you can do about it. Whereas, yeah, because the Tralfamadorians almost look down on humanity with pity because of how limited their view is, right? How limited their perspective on the world and the universe is.
You value your ignorance of what is to come.
Limited to the extent that the Tralfamadorians note at one point that out of all the millions of species they've encountered throughout the galaxy, the only one that has ever developed a notion of free will are humans.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's such a silly concept to them.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And to us, we hear that and think, well, that's depressing. But, like, what's depressing about it? You know?
Right. It's a really interesting dichotomy because Star Trek is framing linear time as a positive.
The preferred method of chronal travel.
Yeah. Whereas this is just sort of like...
Yeah.
Why are you obsessing with all of these things that happen or could happen? Because they happened.
Right.
It's all just
everything,
there.
Everything is.
It's all there. Like, why? Yeah. Why are you even worrying about this at this point?
It's really interesting to me in the last chapter. He also, because Vonnegut was clearly writing this at the same time that Kennedy was shot. And Robert Kennedy was shot. And Martin Luther King Jr. Because he mentions both of those in the final chapter of this. And after each one, so it goes, so it goes. Right? These big historic events, these things that felt like they shook the foundation of the country, of democratic processes.
But the Tralfamadorians shook the experience of the universe when they destroyed it. So
right.
So it goes.
So it goes. So it goes. So it goes.
I mean, it's got to end at some point. It's not really an end because it's not an end point, which is, I think, of course, going back to the speech that Billy is giving at the end. There is no end. It just is a thing.
We could talk about the Tralfamadorians' books.
Sure, yeah.
It is a collection of sentences that have been carefully chosen to capture a moment in every way, emotionally, physically, everything. It's like you read it and you understand the full scope of a single moment, right? It manifests even in their writing, I guess, like this outlook.
Yeah, with a beginning, middle, and end.
With a beginning, middle, and end. There's no beginning, middle, and end. This is simply a thing that is.
And that's the thing about, there's a disruption that comes from war and atrocities and destruction that some people say Vonnegut is trying to mirror by destroying the beginning, middle, end, by creating a massacre of narrative and popping, and placing Billy in multiple places all at once. The story of his life is clear to us. If we want to reconstruct it, we can do that. But
why would we want to?
No, but my point is the fact that it's written. We know what all these events are and when they happen. We just don't experience them that way because of the way that they're written. It's all blown up and separated. And that's evidently purposeful in the sense that war is senseless and destructive. Again, this isn't an original thought. It's just something...
This just in. Extra, war, senseless and destructive.
No, not that part. God damn it.
Shut up, buddy. Come on.
The idea that the narrative, just splitting this up non-linearly, is supposed to also reflect the destruction of war. That's the representation of becoming unstuck. To me, my thoughts were being unstuck in time basically allows you to witness it from a distance.
Yeah.
So I don't know if, which is the proper way to think about it, but from me, the fact that you're unstuck from time. Okay, so I can see the beginning, the middle, the end all at once. And Billy welcomes the threat of his death from Paul Lazaro.
Paul Lazaro, who shoots him with a laser.
Yeah.
A guy named Lazaro uses a laser. Who would have thought?
Lazaro, yeah. I think that if we take the perspective of Billy not truly experiencing these things, the perspective that Billy is making this up or has created it psychologically, the notion that he knows when his life is going to end at least mirrors what he wants to believe, right? Like, this person has said, you're going to die, and you're going to die by my hand. That gives the character his end point. So now I can envision my end point. I certainly know where I came from. So all of it is laying right out in front of me, and I can experience time the way I imagine it when I'm on Tralfamadore.
And my life's philosophy allows me to accept the fact that I'm just going to die, and I can just take it.
Yeah.
At face value. It's kind of like, I don't know, religious zealotry. You know?
Here's another thing that I thought, is there any symbolism to the fact that they're plungers?
I was just going to bring that up. God damn it. The Tralfamadorians are shaped like plungers.
The letter said that they were 2 feet high and green and shaped like plumber's friends. Their suction cups were on the ground, and their shafts, which were extremely flexible, usually pointed to the sky. At the top of each shaft was a little hand with a green eye in its palm. The creatures were friendly, and they could see in 4 dimensions. They pitied Earthlings for being able to see only 3. They had many wonderful things to teach Earthlings, especially about time. Billy promised to tell what some of those wonderful things were in his next letter.
That's so weird. All right, I was going to ask you, again, maybe this is me. Who did you picture? Did you imagine anybody or any specific creatures or anything as you were going through the book? Like, as we were reading about things, did you picture somebody specifically as Billy or somebody specifically as his wife or things like that?
No, I have real difficulty with that.
All right, so a few people in here really stood out to me, but every time I'm reading about the Tralfamadorians, immediately the only things I could think of were the Kaminoans from Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. The cloners that had the giant necks and the little heads on top, you know, because they look vaguely plunger-like.
I'll admit, if I try to picture a Tralfamadorian, I remember specifically in English class with Miss Boswell Bear.
Oh, yeah, what do you picture for a Tralfamadorian? Miss Boswell Bear said.
The first question on the test was to do a quick sketch of a Tralfamadorian.
Oh, my God, that's fun.
Yeah, and so being the fact that
He looked like one of them scrubbing bubbles guys, but with eyes way up on a stick.
Yeah, I mean, being an artist, I spent way too much time trying to represent that.
It took me like an hour to get the shading under their lip right.
But that being the case, like whenever they talked about the Tralfamadorians, it always made me remember I can see that picture in my brain that I drew of and basically I drew one with his arms straight up. Like doing a straight, and I'm stretching my hands on my fingers wide open. And then another one where they said it's like, kind of like spaghetti. It's all bendy and everything too. So yeah, I drew them both because whatever I draw. But yeah, I guess that's what I picture when they would talk about it. But is there a significance to the fact that they're plungers?
Look,
Are they cleaning out shit?
Yeah, I think so. What do they facilitate? Billy becoming unstuck.
Yeah. Okay. So,
right.
Do you feel like that's
Billy's
real?
got a lot. Billy's got a lot of stuff clogged up in there, man, that he can't deal with, that he's internalizing, that he can't face about himself and his experiences. And if we take it at face value, the Tralfamadorians are what give him the method and the means to get unstuck, get unclogged.
Yeah.
So I
admit I saw this.
Hats off to Vonnegut for the potty humor on that one, but I mean,
yeah,
he mentions that they look like plungers.
Right. No, I get it now, but like this was something that was brought to my attention after having read it. This is one of the things that I witnessed on a YouTube analysis of the book and said some people discussing it, and I was like, what? Really? Like
they might also look a little bit like Marzipan from Homestar Runner. Remember the Homestar Runner cartoons?
No.
Did those miss you?
Homestar Runner.
Man. You don't know Homestar Runner?
What is it?
One of the first viral cartoon sites on the web.
No.
It had this just bizarre cast of characters.
Do you have a poster of this?
I have a puppet in Miles's room, but I don't want to wake him up. I got him a Homestar Runner puppet.
But you don't have like
Christmas.
A massive like poster with 1 billion characters on it, do you?
No, I don't. I don't have a
No,
I don't have that.
Do you think Mel does?
Maybe. No, I don't know. But one year he gifted me a Homestar Runner shirt.
Okay, so
I mean, me and Mel used to watch Homestar Runner videos at work.
Okay.
I would come into work and be like, new Homestar dropped. And we would watch whatever the new Homestar Runner video was.
Except you didn't say Homestar dropped because it was 2000.
Yeah, it was it wasn't, we weren't dropped.
But I feel like I remember somebody talking about having, you don't know Homestar Runner?
Strong Bad? Does the name Strong Bad mean anything to you?
I didn't know it when it was brought up to me the last time, but I thought maybe it was you telling me that story when we were at the bar in Charlotte.
Could have been.
You know?
Could have been. I've never stopped talking about Homestar Runner. Anyway, Marzipan kind of looks similar to a plunger. So that's why I bring it up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I saw this in the plunger representation of it, the actual function of a plunger. I didn't pick up on that. And I was like, is that real? Is that a true thing? But for you to actually think of that yourself, then I guess maybe that is what it's supposed to be.
The only reason I think of that is that he mentions the plunger thing, and like the very first part of the book is unstuck.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense.
And that's what we use it for, so I gotta believe they're the ones that facilitate, from his perspective, all this time travel to begin with. So
yeah, see, these are the connections I'm not able to make in going from prose to discussion. But at the same time, like, there's a lot of mention that this book is also humorous. I did not laugh at any of this. Like I said, most of this, the character was so flat and moving through the world so blandly, I didn't find any humor in it. But some of these other discussion sites and things that talk about So It Goes as sometimes being a punchline to a ridiculous situation. And it never struck me as that. Is this book funny?
Maybe a little.
Certainly not as funny as you and I, but
I think, you ever see the movie About Schmidt? Jack Nicholson, Kathy Bates.
Probably, but I couldn't relate it to this conversation.
The way in which Billy regards his wife is kind of the way this Schmidt character in this movie regards Kathy Bates's character. Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of that, like this, like, how did I end up with this?
But see,
kind of thing.
Valencia was the daughter of the owner of the Ilium School of Optometry. She was rich. She was as big as a house because she couldn't stop eating. She was eating now. She was eating a Three Musketeers candy bar. She was wearing trifocal lenses and harlequin frames. Billy didn't want to marry ugly Valencia. She was one of the symptoms of his disease.
To me, see, I read that as like, okay,
It's kind of mean.
It is.
It's
like not funny, like, to me.
It's like she's always eating. In fact, she's eating right now. She's eating a Three Musketeers bar. It's like, oh, she's eating now. Oh, she's eating the worst thing you could be eating. You know?
Okay. I mean,
chocolate upon chocolate.
Okay.
Not that I don't like I will crush some Three Musketeers.
This is a Snickers podcast, God damn it.
That's true. I like Snickers and Reese's are my preferred
all right
candies.
But at the same time, yeah, I didn't laugh when they talked about the ridiculousness of her because she was kind of, to me, tragic. You know, like she loved him and he could care less.
She truly loved him and she felt like she would never be loved. She mentions at one point, I didn't think anyone would ever marry me. And this is like right as Billy's like, I can't believe I asked her, but what was I thinking? Why did I do this? You know?
And that's not funny to me. Like that, to me, that's just...
It's not funny, no. Yeah, I mean, it might have been funny back in the 60s, but...
I don't know. I mean,
during the laugh-in era, it might have been funny, but I don't know.
I just feel like I'm not getting the joke because most places describe this book as a dark humor take on war and the senselessness of war. Really? I don't remember this being funny at all. And I feel like I'm just missing something.
One part I do think is funny is, again, going back to those Brits when they finally come to like the POW camp and the Brits are all there like, oh, no, jolly good show, you know, all this stuff. And they're saying all these like anecdotes and he's like, Jerry's on the run. And and Billy's like, ha, who's Jerry? You know?
Is it like the jacket that he is given? That's
the one that's way too small, and they look at him like, oh, this was done as a joke.
Yeah.
It's like folded like a hat.
Is that supposed to be funny? Because to me, that just sounded horrific.
The whole thing sounds horrific. I guess it could be funny.
I don't get what the comedy is.
Maybe we need to watch the movie.
My father told me the movie was horrendous. It was terrible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't
Vonnegut said they did a pretty good job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Vonnegut seemed to have pretty good feelings about it. I think he probably felt better about that than he did about Breakfast of Champions when that came out.
Wheaties?
That's one of his other books.
Oh, right.
That's one of the books that has Kilgore Trout in it.
Okay.
Yeah, that one had like Bruce Willis in it. It was like 1999 maybe.
Okay.
Sometime around there, and it had Bruce Willis and I don't remember who else. Albert Finney maybe was in it.
Okay.
But, like, that was not well received at all.
Can you imagine trying to make all these literary books into movies? Like, this wasn't written to be... Like, this isn't Dean Koontz. You know what I mean? No.
From #1 New York Times bestselling author David Baldacci, The 620 Man is back. Can Travis Devine solve the murder of a CIA agent before his own time runs out? The Edge, on sale now.
Like, this isn't fucking David Baldacci or whoever wrote Reacher. Why would you try to turn things like this into movies? Like, they're trying to say way more than you can say in 2 hours.
There was an Onion article from yesterday that was like one of their editorials, you know? Uh-huh. And it was a guy who was like, you can't even watch a movie anymore without seeing some theme explained. And it reminds me of this. And the movie, you know, the movie he's talking about, you discover as you read through his editorial what movie he's complaining about is Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
Oh, jeez.
But one of my buddies sent me a meme of Ron Swanson here, and it says, metaphors? I hate metaphors. That's why my favorite book is Moby Dick. No frou-frou symbolism, just a good tale about a man who hates an animal.
See, that's funny.
So to answer your question, no. I cannot imagine what it must be like trying to adapt something like this to cinema.
And I don't know why you'd even try, honestly.
Yeah.
The only other note, and I mean, this book is a lot about senselessness, and a lot is made of the last few words of this book, which is the chirping of a bird, right?
The chirping of the bird, Putuit.
Yeah. And in the silence of a massacre like that, only a bird could sing. Like, there's nothing to say.
Only a bird. My take on it is a little bit more, I guess, optimistic, in the sense that this is what men have done to themselves, but this bird is still here. This bird doesn't know what the fuck's going on. This bird just shows up, looks over at Billy, Putuit.
Billy and the rest wandered out onto the shady street. The trees were leafing out. There was nothing going on out there, no traffic of any kind. There was only one vehicle, an abandoned wagon drawn by 2 horses. The wagon was green and coffin-shaped. Birds were talking. One bird said to Billy Pilgrim, "Putuit?"
What do you think the bird says?
Yeah.
I think Putuit means so it goes.
Oh, yeah, all right.
That's what I think the last line of the book
that's
is. Putuit, I think it's so it goes.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it in those terms.
And then imagine like that red tunnel from the Looney Tunes.
That's right. I wish that's how it ended. Is that how they ended the movie?
I hope so. Like Roger Rabbit. Oh man. Now that was a movie that knew how to end.
I don't know. I don't know if we've done this book any justice at all. I
think we did great.
Do you? I don't know.
I think I did great.
Thanks, pal.
This interaction sucks.
Okay.
Well, I'm nothing but a sounding board.
I would like to also say, speaking of sounds, we mentioned earlier that we both listened to the James Franco narrated version of it, which I highly recommend. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. He did a great job reading it.
And he's a swell guy.
Well, let's not get into that. But there is also an album that Kurt Vonnegut himself released, reading selections of this book.
Oh.
So it's an abbreviated version of this book, obviously. It runs for about 40 minutes or so. But Kurt Vonnegut himself reads Slaughterhouse 5, and it's on Spotify. You can just listen to it. I listened to it twice this week.
Okay, well, there's no need to brag.
It's compelling listening to Vonnegut.
Is his reading of it bring anything to it that you weren't getting from yourself?
I mean, his actual voice and his literary voice simultaneously.
Yeah, but I mean, clearly he's going to read it with the inflection that he wrote it. And inflection can mean so much. Inflection can mean so much.
If you're going to build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
I think that we have to try and squeeze this book into our podcast format and talk about time travel.
We do. We do have to talk about the time travel aspect of this.
Does it even exist?
That's a good question. I'm going to say yes.
I'm going to say
for the sake of this.
Like at the beginning.
I don't think it does. I don't think it really does. If you step back and look at Billy Pilgrim, is he actually unstuck in time, or is he just having wartime flashbacks? Is he having to struggle to cope with his trauma? It's much more likely the latter.
Yeah.
It seems likely that the Tralfamadorians are a product of his psychosis that's come from...
Or brain damage from the plane crash that we barely mentioned.
Could be that. We don't really know a lot about what happens to him after his recovery from the plane crash, right?
Right.
And we know that the Tralfamadorians are conceptually very similar to things that Kilgore Trout wrote about, and he has absorbed all of Trout's writings, and they're almost like his gospel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it seems like all of the ideas are there. The Tralfamadorians act and behave very similar to his Nazi captors at certain points. Probably a lot nicer.
Similar, except the opposite experience. It's a lap of luxury. You're not uncomfortable with the fact that you're nude, and you get to bang a hot chick. You know what I mean?
We didn't even talk about Montana Wildhat.
Yeah. I mean, she's...
Good deal.
You know, if it weren't 1969, it'd be Skinamax, right? I mean, what is she, Shannon Tweed?
Or Carrie Werher or something, like, just showed up, and suddenly it's like, wow, I'm bunking with her?
Yeah, right. And she takes a liking to you and has your child. All of that is the antithesis of his experience in the slaughterhouse, right?
Right.
Except for the fact that they're both captors, in a sense. But the Tralfamadorians are there to learn from him as much as he is to learn from them.
And how can I take that experience and recolor it in my brain to make it something I can actually live with? Right?
He hadn't been missed, he said, because the Tralfamadorians had taken him through a time warp, so that he could be on Tralfamador for years and still be away from Earth for only a microsecond.
So no, I don't think the time travel is real. I think that it's just...
But if we're going to rank it and discuss it as time travel, do we have to pretend like it is?
I would say it's Tralfamadorian time warp / post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
Which, to me, would rank somewhere around suicide by exhaust.
Well, I gave this some real thought because I know the more that I read about this book and the more I thought about it, and certainly by the end of this conversation, I've gotten to the point where I don't even believe that it's real time travel, to the point where could we even rank it? Now, because we've got a formula to maintain here.
Yeah. Badass. And the badass quotient multiplied by how cool the car looks.
I just meant the fact that you got to rank it. And
yeah,
I had already said in an earlier episode that I'm done with these it happens because it needs to types of time travel. I'm getting tired of it. Like the drug-induced time slipping, just time slipping cuz, you know, just this
time slipping because,
you know, and that's what this is. It's just happening because we need the story to happen non-linearly. So to me, this is really low.
The bottom 3 on our list this season are the time travel hammock from La Jetée. So you see, like, where we're going. Like, the high end stuff always ends up near the bottom. The avant-garde, like and then the time zone road sign from Beavis and Butthead, and then the suicide via carbon monoxide rounds out the bottom of the list. I feel like this goes between Beavis and Butthead and Touchback.
Yeah.
Because Touchback is just pathetic.
Well, I mean, the other's not even...
The other's not even real time travel, so it's got to go below that, right?
Because this is also not real time travel?
Because this is not real.
I mean, the story's not even real because the author is in the first chapter.
Yeah, but none of the stories we've talked about are real.
But you have to experience them as though they are. This one don't have to experience that way, which to me is a real frustration. I want to talk to somebody about, like, why that actually is. Like, what's he doing
I'd be curious. I mean, other than just, like, what I said, to kind of keep the story at an arm's length so he's not himself fully engaged with it, I need to have some sort of... I can't even say avatar, because his avatar in the story is Kilgore Trout.
Oh.
Vonnegut's avatar is Kilgore Trout. Like, that's the character that is like most representative of him as who he is. But I don't think Billy Pilgrim represents in any way Vonnegut, other than the sense that he's just an empty vessel that he can kind of push out there in front of him to sort of rationalize what his own life experience was without actually contending with it himself as he's writing.
Well, what is...
Like, I can only write about this stuff if it's happening to somebody else. And I need somebody who's emotionally divested from it to be able to contend with it. On my personal level as the writer of this book.
Oh, okay.
That's my take anyway. I don't know. I mean...
I mean, that's again, much smarter than me.
I've never written anything... I've never written anything from a place of pure trauma, you know?
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I kind of thought... I was kind of wrestling with the idea that, you know, they're both cleaning the latrine, you know, or vomiting over the smell of the latrine in that one.
Oh, yeah. Oof, that was
chapter.
Rough.
But I always kind of thought, like, Vonnegut can't write this stuff down because he couldn't remember it and didn't want to experience it. But all of the experiences that he had are being experienced by Pilgrim.
Right.
So for me, the analog was Pilgrim to Vonnegut. But Vonnegut, you're right. Vonnegut is in the story.
I just think Vonnegut put an empty shell there.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's smarter than what I was thinking. So how is Kilgore Vonnegut then?
I think Kilgore is...
They both write science
No,
fiction?
I mean, I really do think that Kilgore Trout is a version of Vonnegut, because Vonnegut's stories ended up veering like science fiction-y in this era. I look at him and I think, other than the like weird Fagin-esque sequence where he's like got those minions, those kid minions.
Would that mean where he's like a newsie or something?
Yeah. He's trying to get him to deliver newspapers.
Well,
and
that's
shit.
what I'm thinking. Like, does that mean that he has a poor impression of himself?
I think all writers do, don't they? That's why they drink all the time.
I don't know.
No, not
my
all
fucking
writers.
Stories are
all
awesome.
writers do not.
So
Hemingway did not have a poor impression of
himself. Right. But if Kilgore Trout is supposed to be Vonnegut in this story,
I think it's self-deprecating.
Just humor.
You know what? I have not read the other books with Trout in them.
Okay.
So I would be interested to digest those and see if it colors anything for me, because Trout's not a main character in this book. He's in like a handful of scenes, right?
As interested as you are in reading The Time Traveler's Wife, which you said you were going to do?
No, I'm not going to read that. I'm just going to get right out there. I've seen the future, and I do not read.
Brian, there's no limited time. It's just all time.
It's not a part of my experience. Let's just say that.
So for time travel, then...
I think this is going to be the new number 15.
That's right above Suicide. This is worse
Yes.
than Beavis and Butthead.
Whoa.
I mean, that's... And again, I want to believe Vonnegut would see the humor in that.
I mean, as far as a method of time travel, one, I'm not even sure that it's real time travel, and two, even if it were, it's the more boring kind where it just happens. So I'm on board with that. Beavis and Butthead, it really is a proactive attempt.
Beavis and Butthead attempt to take agency over their life.
Exactly.
So what do you want to do here in the future? Let's go in there and get a hot dog.
This should be at number 8. I feel like this one should be at number 8. Beavis and Butthead.
It's going to climb the ranks.
It should be right under the time regressor.
I was thinking about the time regressor.
You know what I also thought of with regards to our time travel list and other things we talked about?
Okay.
We talked about when we were watching About Time, and we talked about how Tim never had to go through any hardship in his life.
Yes.
Take the time travel in About Time and the time travel in Slaughterhouse 5 and the journeys of their two characters and compare them. One of them dealt with nothing but trauma, and the other one never had anything to worry about. And like, look at how wonderful life is.
But
and,
it's not
and
that
Billy Pilgrim is like,
yeah.
So it goes.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I kept thinking of Tim as I was reading this and thinking, fuck that guy, you know?
Definitely an interesting contrast. Difference is that time travel is happening to Billy Pilgrim.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But you're right. Fuck that Tim guy.
Well, folks, next time.
What is next time?
Next time. Oh, you know what? I just realized that this episode drops on Memorial Day, which seems kind of fitting. It feels like a good time to talk about war, I guess. Next episode, though, coming out the Monday before Father's Day, and we're going to be talking about the movie Frequency. You ever watch this one?
I have not. It's a new one to me.
Oh, okay. All right. Dennis Quaid, Jim Caviezel. Interesting movie.
Okay.
And it's going to be very different than what we've covered so far. It's going to be a very different type of time travel as well.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So look forward to that. It's going to be a nice one for Father's Day.
I will mention, we expected to speak with my father, who's an actual professor of 35 years.
He's going to listen to this and be like, what is Brian talking about? The bird says. The bird says what?
He's going to slap me silly. But we had hoped to have him on to actually discuss this book with us. Circumstances are preventing that at the moment. But hopefully sometime later in the summer, we're going to have a conversation with my father, who actually taught a class on this book and may be able to put some thoughts together that maybe you and I haven't thought of today.
I have no doubt of it.
So I look forward to that conversation. So maybe more in the future, and maybe even a little deeper.
No, we'll get them when we can. Well, thanks for listening, folks. Let us know what you thought of the episode. Please do reach out to us. Email ohboyqlpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this book. It is dense, it is heady, and I'm sure we barely scratched the surface tonight. Make sure you like and subscribe to this show. Please like us. Please clap. On your favorite podcast apps so you don't miss an episode. Can you imagine how bad you'd feel if you accidentally miss one of these?
If you missed this
You don't want that to happen.
You'd feel horrible.
Oh, gosh. Can't imagine what you'd feel like. Just don't let that become a reality, guys.
How much smarter could you possibly feel than me? The opportunity you have to feel so much smarter.
Shots fired.
At who?
Yeah, really. I think Nate just shot at
Friendly
himself.
fire. I'm pretty sure you called me stupid earlier.
I didn't. I simply said that I did a good job.
You realize, of course, I have to go back and edit this, so
you're just going to splice in Butthead going, you dumbass.
That's right.
But find us on social media if you dare. I am at Captain Burns, CaptnBern on Blue Sky, and Brian.Lee.Martins on Instagram and Threads.
And I am at Action Nate on both Blue Sky and Threads.
And that's a wrap for this one, guys. Until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm Nate.
And we'll see you in the future.
So it goes. Pooty wheat,